Fleet Mobility Today.
All right, so let's dig a little deeper into some of these, challenges and strategies we were talking about.
Yeah. Like, how do these companies deal with all the different cultures and stuff in the Americas? It's a huge and diverse region.
Yeah, it really is. And you're right, cultural understanding is super important.
Right. Like, if you're trying to sell cars,
Exactly.
what works in the U.S. might not work in Brazil or Mexico.
For sure.
Yeah.
You have so many different languages, customs, and preferences.
Yeah, it seems like companies would need to be really careful to make sure their message is going to resonate with different groups of people.
Absolutely. Take vehicle preferences, for example.
Okay.
In the U.S., pickup trucks and SUVs are really popular.
Right.
But if you go to a crowded city in Latin America, people might want a smaller car that gets good gas mileage.
Yeah, it makes sense. People have different needs depending on where they live.
Exactly. So companies need to understand these differences if they want to be successful.
But it's not just about like what kind of car people want.
Right.
It's about how companies do business in different cultures.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like in some cultures, it's all about building relationships and meeting face to face.
Yeah.
It's important for making a deal.
Okay.
But in other cultures, people are more direct and transactional.
Interesting.
Yeah. Companies have to be aware of these differences.
It sounds like being flexible is important.
Yeah, being flexible and adaptable is super important. And, this is one reason why those partnerships are so important.
The ones we were talking about before.
Yes. When international companies partner with local companies, it's like having someone to show them the ropes.
Right.
They get a better understanding of the local market and can build trust with customers.
Yeah. It's like having a guide to help you navigate everything.
Exactly. But, we've been focusing a lot on culture, but there are also economic and political things to think about, too.
Right. Like the Trump trade.
Exactly.
Things like exchange rates, trade deals, and government rules and regulations.
Yeah, all of those things can impact the auto industry.
Makes it hard to plan.
It does. It can create a lot of uncertainty for companies.
Yeah. So on top of all of that, you also have electric vehicles and self-driving cars coming onto the scene.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
How are those things changing the auto industry in the Americas?
Well, it's really interesting because, the adoption rate for electric vehicles is different all over the place.
How so?
Well, in the U.S. and Canada, people are buying a lot of electric vehicles.
Okay.
It seems like governments there have been pushing people to buy them.
Yeah, with incentives and stuff.
Yeah. And people are more aware of environmental issues.
Makes sense. But are other places as interested in electric vehicles?
It seems like in some places it's been slower.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, sometimes it's because there aren't enough places to charge your car.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, and sometimes electric vehicles are just too expensive compared to gas cars.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then there's just, people being unsure about them.
Yeah, I guess some people are worried about how far they can go on one charge or if they're reliable.
Exactly. So there are a lot of things to think about.
Yeah, for sure. So what are the car companies? Are they all trying to go electric?
It seems like some are more committed than others,
Like
General Motors and Ford. They've both said that they're going to eventually only sell electric cars.
Wow. So they're going all in on electric.
They are. They're putting a lot of money into developing electric vehicle technology.
Yeah, that's a big change.
It is. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
More and more people are buying them.
Yeah.
Plus, governments are starting to create stricter rules about emissions.
So they kind of have to change with the times.
Yeah, they do. Otherwise, they might not be able to compete.
Makes sense. But what about fleet management companies? They manage lots of vehicles, right?
Yeah. Are they starting to switch to electric vehicles?
Yeah, are they?
It's a slow process. I mean, they have to think about charging all the cars,
Oh, yeah.
making sure they're maintained properly, and training drivers how to use them.
That's a lot to think about.
It is. But they are working with car companies and energy providers to find solutions.
Seems complicated.
It is. But, there are a lot of benefits to using electric vehicles for fleets.
Okay, like what?
Well, the cost of fuel would be lower. And they generally require less maintenance.
Okay.
And, of course, they're better for the environment.
Yeah, so there are a lot of positives.
Yeah, there are. But it's not easy.
Yeah, and then on top of all of that, there's also the self-driving car thing happening.
Oh, yeah. Autonomous driving.
Yeah.
That's a big one. It's still early, but I think it could have a huge impact on the auto industry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, imagine a world where all the delivery trucks and taxis are self-driving.
Yeah. It sounds crazy, but it's getting closer every day.
That's true. Are there any companies actually testing self-driving vehicles in the Americas?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Companies like Waymo and Cruise are already testing them in some U.S. cities.
Wow. And what about other countries? Are they doing the same?
Yeah, other countries are doing it too, but the U.S. seems to be leading the way.
It seems like there's still a lot of challenges with self-driving cars.
Yeah, there are. Like safety, people being comfortable with the technology, and ethical questions.
Right. Like what happens if the car has to make a decision in a dangerous situation?
Yeah, those are tough questions.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that transportation is going to change a lot in the future.
Yeah. But with all this talk about technology and stuff, I just want to make sure we don't forget about the people who are going to be using these vehicles.
The consumers.
Yeah. What should they be paying attention to as the auto industry changes?
I think the most important thing is to remember that things are changing constantly.
Oh.
The auto industry never stands still.
So everyone needs to be able to adapt.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's true. We've talked a lot about companies and tech, but in the end, it's the people who are buying and using these vehicles who are going to decide what succeeds.
exactly. So as we go into the last part of this deep dive, I think it's important to keep the consumers in mind.
Okay.
How are their choices going to impact the companies?
Yeah.
And how are they going to shape the future of transportation?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let's move into the final part of our deep dive and see what happens next. So we've talked about all these different companies and alliances and trends. But like you said, it all comes down to the people buying and using these vehicles.
Right, the consumers.
Yeah. What do you think will be the biggest factors influencing their choices in the future?
Well, cost is always going to be a big factor.
Right.
Like electric vehicles are getting cheaper,
Yeah.
but they're still usually more expensive than gas cars.
Okay.
So once they cost about the same, I think
Yeah.
we'll see more people buying them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then there's the whole thing about how practical they are. Like, people get worried about running out of charge.
Yeah, that's a big one.
They need to know they can get where they need to go.
Exactly. So there needs to be more places to charge them.
Charging stations.
Yeah. At home, at work, on the road.
Yeah, if it's easy to charge them, I think more people would get them.
For sure. And, this makes me think about different groups of people.
Demographics.
Yes. How will younger people feel about all of this compared to older people?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
Well, younger generations seem to be really into technology and the environment.
Yeah,
So I think electric vehicles and self-driving cars will be really appealing to them.
okay. But what about older people?
Yeah. It might take them a bit longer to get used to all the new tech,
Right.
but I think once electric vehicles become more common and self-driving cars are proven to be safe,
Yeah,
people of all ages will start using them.
right. It's all about getting comfortable with the new technology.
Yeah, and trusting it. But, we've been talking a lot about different people, but what about different places?
Oh, yeah, like cities versus more rural areas.
Yeah, I think in cities we're going to see electric vehicles and maybe even self-driving taxis a lot sooner.
Yeah, cities are already crowded.
Yeah. So it makes sense that people there would want smaller, more efficient vehicles.
Right.
But in rural areas where people need to drive longer distances,
Yeah.
it might take longer for them to switch to electric vehicles.
Okay, that makes sense. So there are a lot of different factors at play here.
Definitely. It's all about people, places, technology, and just, the choices that consumers make.
Yeah, it's complex. Is there any way to know for sure what's going to happen in the future?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it's safe to say that the auto industry is about to change a lot.
Especially here in the Americas.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really interesting time to be watching all of this unfold.
It is.
But I think the most important takeaway is that consumers have the power to shape the future.
Right. Their decisions about what to buy and use are going to determine what happens.
Exactly. So to everyone listening, keep exploring these topics, learn more about the companies and the technology, and think about how you might want to be a part of it all.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about all the possibilities.
It is. So stay curious, stay informed, and enjoy the ride.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of vehicles and suppliers in the Americas.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.